My name is Abigail Parker, and I'm 28 years old. One rainy night, my father screamed, "Get out," and threw my belongings onto our front lawn. I slept in my car, sobbing until sunrise. 24 hours later, I was unlocking the door to my $45 million waterfront villa in Palm Beach. Life can change in an instant, especially when someone you trust betrays you while someone you never knew makes you an heiress. Before I tell you how my life turned upside down and then right side up again, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family turn their back on you. I grew up in a modest brick colonial in a middle-class Boston suburb. Our house wasn't fancy, but it was in a good school district, which mattered tremendously to my father, Richard Parker. Dad worked as a bank manager at First National Bank of Boston for 30 years. He believed in discipline, structure, and conventional success. His world operated in black and white, with no room for the colorful gray areas where I always seemed to exist. My mother, Elizabeth, was his opposite in many ways. She had a gentle spirit and artistic sensibility that balanced our home. She taught elementary school art and always encouraged my creative interests. When I was 15, she died from breast cancer. The day we buried her, I watched something in my father harden. He became more rigid, more controlling, as if strictness could prevent any more unexpected tragedies. My older brother Matthew got our father's practical mind. He studied economics at Harvard, Dad's proudest moment, and became an investment banker in New York. Matthew called home every Sunday, visited on major holidays, and sent expensive Christmas gifts. In my father's eyes, Matthew was doing everything right. Then there was me. I loved art history, museums, and preservation work. I spent hours sketching in my room or visiting local galleries. After high school, I attended Boston University on a partial scholarship, majoring in art history with a minor in museum studies. Dad tolerated this because I had a boyfriend, Jackson, who was studying business economics. Dad liked Jackson, often asking about his classes and career plans while barely acknowledging mine. I think Dad hoped Jackson's practicality would rub off on me. "Practical careers pay bills, Abigail," Dad would say. "Passion projects lead to poverty." During college, I interned at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. Those were some of the happiest days of my life, surrounded by beautiful things with historical significance. After graduation, while Jackson moved to Chicago for a banking job, ending our relationship, I landed a position at Bennett Gallery, a small but respected establishment in downtown Boston. The salary barely covered expenses, but I loved every minute. I cataloged collections, coordinated with artists, and helped with exhibit installations. It was meaningful work that made my heart sing. Dad couldn't understand why I'd accept such a dead-end job when I could get an MBA or go into marketing. To save money, I moved back into my childhood bedroom. Every morning, I'd leave our suburb on the commuter rail, return in the evening, and face Dad's disapproving glances over dinner. "When are you going to get a real career, Abigail?" became his weekly refrain. Our uneasy peace shattered 6 months ago when Eleanor Sullivan entered our lives. Dad met her at a bank function. She was a wealth management specialist who had transferred from the Chicago branch. Eleanor was 52, 10 years younger than Dad, with perfectly highlighted blonde hair and an expensive wardrobe. Within weeks, she was staying over. Within 2 months, she had moved in. From the beginning, something about Eleanor felt off. She was sugary sweet around my father, but cold when we were alone. She would reorganize the kitchen so I couldn't find anything. She'd make backhanded compliments about my appearance or job. "That gallery must be so fulfilling for someone with your modest ambitions," she'd say, sipping the premium coffee she'd convinced Dad to start buying. I tried to be welcoming, remembering how lonely Dad had been after Mom died. But Eleanor wasn't interested in being my friend or even my father's partner. She was positioning herself to be his wife and secure her financial future. "Your father deserves someone who appreciates his success," she told me once while Dad was out mowing the lawn. Not everyone understands the value of financial security. Some people just drift through life. The dig was obvious, but I bit my tongue. Fighting with Eleanor would only upset Dad, and despite our differences, I still loved him and wanted him to be happy. Our household tensions grew as Eleanor gradually claimed more territory. She redecorated the living room, removing family photos and replacing them with generic artwork. My mother's garden, which Dad had maintained for years after her death, was paved over for additional parking. Each change erased more of our family history, and with it, my sense of belonging in my childhood home. Eleanor's influence over my father grew stronger each week. Dad started criticizing aspects of my life he'd previously accepted. My vegetarian diet suddenly inconvenienced family meals. My gallery hours were irresponsible. My few art purchases were wasteful spending. One evening, I came home early and overheard Eleanor in the kitchen. "Richard, I'm worried about Abigail," she said in that concerned tone that made my skin crawl. "Living at home at her age isn't healthy. She's becoming too dependent on you." "She's saving money," Dad replied, though he sounded uncertain. "Is she? I never see her contributing to household expenses. And that job, it's more like a hobby than a career. You're enabling her to avoid adult responsibilities." I stood frozen in the hallway, blood rushing to my face. The audacity of this woman who'd known me for months telling my father who I was after he'd raised me for 28 years. Later that week, I received notification about a small inheritance. My maternal grandmother had left each grandchild $10,000 in a trust that matured on our 28th birthday. I was excited to put it toward eventually getting my own place or perhaps taking some professional development courses in art authentication. Somehow, Eleanor found out. Over dinner that night, she said, "Abigail, now that you've received that windfall from your grandmother, your father, and I think it's appropriate for you to start contributing to household expenses. We're thinking $800 monthly would be fair." Dad nodded along, not meeting my eyes. I was stunned. "Dad, I was planning to save that money for—" "You're an adult living in this house," he interrupted. "Adults pay their way." I reluctantly agreed, though it meant my independence would be delayed even further. The next day, I wrote my first check to Richard Parker and left it on the kitchen counter. A week later, I came home early from work with a migraine and found Eleanor in my bedroom, going through my dresser drawers. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She didn't even look embarrassed. "Just organizing. This house needs systems." "My room doesn't need your systems," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Please don't come in here when I'm not home." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "This is Richard's house. Every room is our concern." That night, she told Dad I'd been incredibly disrespectful to her. He lectured me about treating Eleanor with appreciation for all she does around here. The situation deteriorated further when I noticed some of Mom's jewelry missing from her old jewelry box, which Dad had given me after she died. A pearl necklace, a silver bracelet, and her favorite earrings gone. I approached Eleanor carefully. "Have you seen Mom's pearl necklace?" And some other pieces seemed to be missing from her jewelry box. Eleanor's face transformed into a mask of concern. "Oh, sweetheart, your father gave those to me. He said Elizabeth would want me to have them. I assumed you knew." I knew that was a lie. Dad would never have given away Mom's favorite pieces without telling me, and he certainly wouldn't have said Elizabeth would want Eleanor to have them. My mother's name had been nearly sacred in our house since her death. When I asked Dad about it later, he seemed confused. "Eleanor said you told her you didn't want those old-fashioned pieces. She said you were happy for her to have them." It was my word against Eleanor's, and increasingly, Eleanor was winning. I called Matthew in New York, desperate for an ally. "Something's not right with Eleanor," I explained. "She's manipulating Dad, going through my things, and I think she took Mom's jewelry." My brother sighed heavily. "Abby, you're being paranoid. Dad's happy for the first time in years. Can't you just be supportive? Eleanor's accomplished and sophisticated. Maybe you feel threatened because she's successful in ways you aren't." Even my own brother had been charmed by Eleanor's act. I felt increasingly alone. Around this time, an official-looking letter arrived addressed to me. The return address was from a law firm in Palm Beach, Florida, Harrison, Mitchell and Associates. I didn't know anyone in Florida, and assuming it was junk mail, I tossed it in my desk drawer unopened. As tensions rose at home, I began staying later at the gallery and spending weekends with my friend Sophia, doing anything to avoid the toxic atmosphere at home. My emotional state deteriorated as I felt increasingly isolated and gaslit by Eleanor's subtle manipulations and my father's growing coldness. The situation came to a breaking point on a rainy Tuesday in April. I was at work when the gallery owner, Ms. Bennett, asked me to help her with some banking paperwork. As we reviewed statements, I noticed something familiar: my father's bank. As Ms. Bennett scrolled through transactions, a name caught my eye. Eleanor Sullivan had authorized a wire transfer from another account. Could I see that again? I asked, trying to sound casual. Ms. Bennett enlarged the screen. There it was, a transfer from Richard Parker's personal savings to an account belonging to Eleanor Sullivan. It wasn't a joint account. It was hers alone. The transfer amount was $25,000. My hands trembled as I excused myself. In the bathroom, I called my father's bank, posing as his administrative assistant. The customer service representative confirmed that several large transfers had been made in the past few months. Eleanor had been systematically draining my father's accounts. I left work early, my mind racing. At home, I searched for evidence and found bank statements Eleanor had hidden in a locked drawer of Dad's desk. I photographed everything with my phone, documentation of transfers totaling nearly $120,000 over 4 months. When Eleanor returned from her shopping trip, I confronted her in the kitchen. "I know what you're doing," I said, showing her the photos on my phone. "You're stealing from my father." For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw the cold calculation in her eyes before she recovered her composure. "Abigail, your father and I are planning our future together. These transfers are for our retirement property in Florida. Richard knows all about it." "Then you won't mind if I ask him," I replied, secretly recording our conversation. Eleanor's voice hardened. "Listen to me carefully. Your father doesn't need the stress of your accusations. If you show him those photos or say anything about this, I'll make sure he chooses me over you. And trust me, he will. He deserves to know the truth." "The truth?" Eleanor laughed coldly. "The truth is you're a grown woman living off your daddy because you chose a worthless career. The truth is I make him happier than you ever could. The truth is he's tired of supporting you but feels too guilty to say it." I was so focused on her words that I didn't notice her reach for my phone until she had snatched it from my hand. Before I could stop her, she had deleted all the photos and the recording. "You little fool," she hissed, tossing my phone onto the counter. "Know your place." I was shaking with rage but managed to say, "This isn't over. I'll go to the bank tomorrow. They have records." Eleanor's eyes flashed with anger, but then she smiled, which was somehow worse. "We'll see about that." I went upstairs to my room, fighting tears of frustration. I needed to get those bank statements from Dad's desk before she could destroy them. But when I came back downstairs an hour later, I found Eleanor with a bruise forming on her cheek, a bruise that hadn't been there during our confrontation. "What happened to your face?" I asked. She just gave me a cold smile and turned away. When Dad came home, I was in the kitchen making tea, trying to calm my nerves. I heard Eleanor crying in the living room, her voice carrying deliberately. "I was just trying to talk to her about contributing more, Richard." She flew into a rage. I never thought she would actually hit me. My teacup crashed to the floor. "Hit her?" I raced to the living room. "That's a lie." "Dad, she's lying." My father stood with his arm around Eleanor, whose face was tear-stained, the bruise now darkened with what I realized must be makeup. "She's been stealing from you," I said desperately. "Check your accounts." "She's transferred over $100,000 to her personal account." "Enough," Dad roared. His face was flushed with anger. "Eleanor told me you might make up stories. She warned me you were jealous of our relationship." "Dad, please," I begged. "Check your bank statements. They're in your desk." "I already looked," Eleanor interjected softly. "She's hidden them." Of course she had. She'd removed the evidence while I was in my room. I can't believe you would sink this low, Dad said, his voice shaking. Accusing Eleanor of theft? Physically attacking her? What's happened to you? Nothing happened to me. She's manipulating you. She's after your money. Get out, he bellowed, his face contorted with rage I'd never seen before. Get out of my house right now. Richard, Eleanor said with fake gentleness, maybe we should all calm down. No, I've had enough. If she can't respect you, she can't live here. He turned to me, eyes cold. Pack your things and get out tonight. Dad, please, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Now, Abigail. What followed was the most humiliating experience of my life. Dad followed me upstairs, watching as I threw clothes into a suitcase. When I reached for my mother's remaining jewelry, he blocked me. Leave it. It belongs to the family. I am family, I said through tears. Not anymore, he responded, and those two words broke something inside me. As I dragged my suitcase downstairs, Eleanor watched with thinly veiled satisfaction. Outside, rain poured down as Dad threw more of my belongings onto the front lawn. Books, shoes, my laptop bag. Neighbors peered through windows at the spectacle. I loaded everything I could into my 10-year-old Honda and took one last look at the house where I'd grown up. Dad stood in the doorway, Eleanor behind him with her hand possessively on his shoulder. Then I drove away, homeless at 28, betrayed by my father, with nowhere to go as thunder crashed overhead. That night, I parked behind the closed gallery, reclined my seat, and cried until I had no tears left. Rain drummed on the roof of my car as I tried to process what had happened. My phone battery died, completing my isolation. When morning came, I used the gallery bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth. Ms. Bennet arrived early and found me there, looking like I'd been through a war. Abigail, what on earth happened? I broke down again, as I explained. Ms. Bennet immediately called her niece Sophia, my friend from college who lived nearby. You're staying with Sophia until you figure things out, Ms. Bennet insisted, pressing a coffee into my hands. And take the day off. No arguments. Sophia arrived 30 minutes later and helped transfer my hastily packed belongings to her apartment. Her kindness nearly undid me again. How could a friend show such compassion when my own father had thrown me out? As I unpacked, I found the unopened letter from the Florida law firm among my things. With everything happening, I'd forgotten about it. I tore it open, expecting some kind of credit card offer or timeshare advertisement. Instead, I found a formal letter. Dear MS. Parker, our firm represents the estate of the late Thomas Williams. As the executor of Mr. Williams' will, it is my duty to inform you that you have been named as the sole beneficiary of his considerable estate. Mr. Williams was your maternal great-uncle and passed away last month at the age of 92. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the details of your inheritance and the necessary arrangements. Sincerely, Daniel Harrison. Yesq. I stared at the letter in disbelief. A great-uncle? Mom had mentioned her Uncle Thomas occasionally, her mother's brother who had moved away decades ago and became estranged from the family. He was the black sheep who chose art over responsibility, according to family lore. Mom always spoke of him with a hint of admiration despite never having met him as an adult. With trembling hands, I called the number on the letterhead. Harrison, Mitchell and Associates, a receptionist answered. This is Abigail Parker. I received a letter about Thomas Williams' estate. Within seconds, I was transferred to Daniel Harrison himself. Miss Parker, thank you for calling. I've been trying to reach you. Is it possible for you to come to Florida to discuss the inheritance in person? There are documents to sign and matters that would be best addressed face-to-face. I'm not sure I can afford a trip to Florida right now, I admitted, embarrassment burning my cheeks. That won't be a problem, Mr. Harrison replied smoothly. The estate will cover all travel expenses. In fact, Mr. Williams made specific provisions for this. Would tomorrow be too soon? 24 hours later, I was sitting in a sleek office in Palm Beach, facing Daniel Harrison, a distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes behind expensive glasses. Before we discuss the specifics, I'd like to give you some context, Harrison began. Thomas Williams was a remarkable man. He made his fortune initially through real estate investments in the 1970s, but was always passionate about art. Over time, he built one of the most impressive private collections in the country. Harrison slid a photograph across the desk, an elderly man with my mother's eyes, standing in what appeared to be an art gallery. Thomas never married and had no children. He lived a relatively private life here in Palm Beach. However, he kept tabs on his family from afar, particularly after his sister, your grandmother, passed away. He knew about me? I asked, stunned. Harrison nodded. More than knew about you. He followed your career with great interest. Your mother had written to him a few times before her death, sending photos and updates about the family. When he learned you were pursuing art history, he was delighted. He saw himself in you. I felt tears, threatening again. A family member who would have understood me, appreciated my passion, had been out there all along, and now he was gone before I'd had the chance to meet him. Thomas had investigators discreetly check in on you periodically. He knew about your position at the gallery, your dedication to art preservation. He was particularly impressed when he learned you chose that path despite family pressure to pursue something more conventionally successful. The parallels to his own life weren't lost on me. Now, as to the inheritance itself. Harrison cleared his throat. Thomas Williams' estate is valued at approximately $45 million. I nearly fell out of my chair. $45 million? Yes. This includes his Palm Beach villa valued at $15 million, his art collection appraised at $20 million, and liquid assets and investments totaling roughly $10 million. The room seemed to spin around me. Yesterday I'd been homeless, sleeping in my car. Today I was being told I was worth $45 million. There must be some mistake, I whispered. No mistake, Miss Parker. Here is a copy of the will, which specifically names you as the sole heir. Harrison handed me a document. Thomas was very clear about his wishes. He wanted his collection to go to someone who would appreciate its significance, not just its monetary value. As I scanned the document, seeing my name in black and white, the reality began to sink in. The villa staff has been informed of your arrival. Maria, the housekeeper, has worked for your great-uncle for 30 years and knew you would be coming eventually. She's prepared the master suite for you. The staff. I echoed weakly. Harrison smiled. Maria, the groundskeeper Carlos, and security personnel. The estate is quite substantial. He showed me photos of a stunning Mediterranean-style mansion overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, with manicured gardens and a private beach. This is mine. I couldn't reconcile the images with my new reality. All yours. The car service outside will take you there whenever you're ready. I've prepared temporary cards and accounts for your immediate needs until we can complete the necessary paperwork. As Harrison continued explaining details, I remembered snippets of conversations with my mother about her mysterious uncle. He marches to his own drummer, she'd said once. The family never forgave him for choosing art over joining the family business. But sometimes I wonder if he didn't make the wisest choice of all. After signing preliminary documents, I found myself in the back seat of a luxury car, heading toward my new home, still wearing yesterday's clothes, still reeling from the emotional whiplash of the past 48 hours. Your great-uncle was a wonderful man, the driver commented as we turned through massive gates. The whole staff adored him. As the villa came into view, I gasped. The photos hadn't done it justice. Stately palm trees lined the circular driveway leading to a grand entrance. Flowering bougainvillea cascaded over elegant archways. And beyond the house itself, the sparkling blue of the Atlantic stretched to the horizon. Standing at the entrance was an older woman with silver-streaked dark hair and a warm smile. Welcome home, Miss Parker, she said as I stepped out of the car.
I'm Maria.
Your Uncle Thomas spoke of you often. He would be so pleased you're here. And for the first time since my father had shouted those devastating words, "Get out," I felt like I might have found somewhere I belonged. The massive front doors opened into a soaring entryway with a crystal chandelier and marble floors. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating artwork that took my breath away, original pieces by masters I'd only ever seen in museums. "Is that a Monet?" I whispered, stopping before a luminous landscape. Maria nodded. "Your uncle acquired it in the 80s. He always said it was his morning sunshine, regardless of the weather outside." She gave me a tour that left me speechless. The villa had 8 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a formal dining room that could seat 20, and a professional kitchen where Thomas had employed a part-time chef for special occasions. "Antonio comes in 3 times a week," Maria explained. "But I've asked him to give you a few days to settle in before meeting him. There's plenty of prepared food in the refrigerator." The master suite occupied the entire east wing of the second floor, with a private terrace overlooking the ocean. The closet was bigger than my bedroom at Dad's house, and the bathroom featured a marble shower and a soaking tub positioned before a window with a sea view. "This was Thomas's room?" I asked, running my hand over the silk bedspread. "No, señorita. Your uncle's rooms are in the west wing. This suite was always kept ready for you." "For me? But he never met me." Maria's eyes softened. "He always hoped you would visit someday. He had the suite redesigned 5 years ago when he learned of your interest in art history. He said, 'My niece will need a proper place to stay when she finally comes home.'" I felt a lump in my throat. This man who shared my blood and my passion had prepared a place for me while I'd struggled to feel welcome in my own father's house. The tour continued to the heart of the estate, the art gallery. A converted ballroom now housed Thomas's most prized possessions, displayed with museum-quality lighting and climate control. "Your uncle acquired pieces that spoke to him, not just for investment," Maria explained as I moved reverently among sculptures, paintings, and artifacts spanning centuries and continents. Against one wall stood a glass case containing ancient Greek pottery. Nearby hung Renaissance sketches, Impressionist paintings, and contemporary works arranged in thoughtful conversation with each other. "He kept detailed journals about each acquisition," Maria said, gesturing to leather-bound books on a reading table. The stories behind the art were as important to him as the pieces themselves. I opened one journal at random and found meticulous notes in elegant handwriting describing a small Degas bronze, its provenance, the circumstances of purchase, and personal reflections on its significance. "Your room is ready whenever you'd like to rest," Maria said gently, recognizing my emotional exhaustion. "Carlos will bring your belongings up." Belongings? My few hastily packed items would be lost in that massive closet. The contrast between my previous life and this new reality was dizzying. That first night, I stood on the terrace watching moonlight shimmer on the Atlantic, feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life. The villa was beautiful beyond imagination, but overwhelming in its grandeur. Did I belong here? Could I possibly manage this responsibility? I slept fitfully, dreams filled with my father's angry face and Eleanor's smug smile, interspersed with images of an old man I'd never met writing my name in his will. Morning brought clarity with the sunrise. I woke early and found Maria in the kitchen preparing coffee. "Did you sleep well, Miss Parker?" "Please call me Abigail," I insisted. "And not really, but I think that's to be expected." Over breakfast on the terrace, Maria shared stories about Thomas that helped me form a picture of the great-uncle I'd never know. He was private but kind, generous to his staff and to arts organizations, but suspicious of people who wanted his money or social connections. He had a dry sense of humor and read 3 newspapers every morning. "Why did he stay away from the family?" I asked. Maria considered her words carefully. "Your uncle made choices his family couldn't understand. He valued beauty and meaning over security and convention. When they rejected his path, he built his own life. But he never stopped caring about his blood, especially your mother. He kept every letter she sent." Later that morning, I explored Thomas's personal study, a warm space with leather chairs and walls of books. In his desk, I found a file labeled Elizabeth containing letters from my mother spanning decades, the last dated just months before her death. In them, she shared family news, including mentions of me, my art projects as a child, my decision to study art history, my graduation. I also discovered a separate folder marked Abigail, with newspaper clippings of student art exhibitions I'd participated in, a copy of my college thesis, and even a brochure from Bennett Gallery with my name listed as staff. He'd been watching my journey all along, this shadow guardian I never knew existed. In the following days, I began to venture beyond the estate. Palm Beach was a world away from Boston, pristine beaches, swaying palms, and wealth on display everywhere. I visited local galleries and museums, introducing myself simply as Abigail, new to the area, not ready to claim my status as Thomas Williams' heiress. At the Nord Museum of Art, I met Lindsay Barrett, the curator of modern collections, who became my first local friend after we bonded over a discussion of their Georgia O'Keeffe exhibition. "You really know your stuff," she commented. "Do you work in the field?" "I did at a small gallery in Boston," I replied, still speaking in past tense, still adjusting to my new reality. "We should have coffee sometime." The art community here is smaller than you'd think, and it's always nice to meet someone who speaks the language. That casual invitation became my first step into building a new social circle, one based on shared interests rather than obligation or history. As April turned to May, I settled into a routine. Mornings were spent with Thomas's journals, learning about the collection I'd inherited. Afternoons often involved meetings with Daniel Harrison regarding the estate, or exploring the cultural attractions of Palm Beach. Evenings were for quiet reflection on the terrace, planning my future. I joined the Palm Beach Preservation Society, a group dedicated to protecting historic architecture and cultural landmarks in the area. At my first meeting, I met Jonathan Reed, the society's president, who had known Thomas. "Williams was one of our most dedicated supporters," he told me. His annual contribution funded our educational programs for local schools. When I mentioned I was Thomas's great-niece, the news spread quickly through Palm Beach's tight-knit cultural community. Suddenly, invitations arrived for gallery openings, charity galas, and private viewings. The mysterious heiress was a subject of curiosity. The Palm Beach Post ran a small article, "Williams' Estate Passes to Art Historian Niece," which thankfully included minimal personal details. Still, I began receiving calls from wealth managers, auction houses, and charitable organizations seeking my patronage. Daniel Harrison helped me navigate these new waters, advising me on which invitations to accept and which to politely decline. "Your great-uncle was selective about his public appearances," he counseled. "You don't need to be everywhere just because you can be." As I gained confidence, an idea began forming, a way to honor Thomas's legacy while creating something meaningful of my own. I would establish an art foundation that supported emerging artists and provided educational opportunities for underprivileged students. The Williams Parker Foundation would combine my great-uncle's resources with my passion for making art accessible to everyone. The seed of this plan gave me purpose beyond simply existing in my newfound luxury. For the first time since being thrown out of my childhood home, I felt excited about the future, ready to build something lasting from the unexpected gift I'd been given. 3 months after moving into the villa, I had settled into my new life. The Williams Parker Foundation was taking shape with help from a team of arts professionals and nonprofit experts. I'd converted one wing of the villa into foundation offices and planned to open selected rooms of the collection to small educational tours. I had deliberately maintained my distance from Boston, not reaching out to my father or brother. The wound was still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. I'd changed my phone number and only shared my new contact information with Sophia and Ms. Bennett, swearing them to secrecy. But the past has a way of catching up, no matter how far you run. One Tuesday afternoon, as I reviewed architectural plans for converting the pool house into a small gallery space, my phone rang with Sophia's name on the screen. "Abby, I thought you should know, your brother called me looking for you." My stomach tightened. "What did he want?" "He said he's been trying to reach you. Apparently, there was some article in an art magazine mentioning the Williams Parker Foundation and connecting you to the Williams estate in Palm Beach. Matt put it together and has been trying to find you." So much for privacy. Did you tell him anything? Just that you were okay. I didn't give him your number or address.
She paused.
He sounded genuinely concerned, Abby. I thanked her for the warning and ended the call, knowing it was only a matter of time before Matthew found me. Sure enough, that evening my assistant forwarded an email from him that had come through the Foundation's new website. Abby, I've been worried sick about you. Dad said you left after a fight, but I had no idea you disappeared completely.
Please call me.
We need to talk. Matt, no mention of his dismissal of my concerns about Eleanor. No acknowledgement of how he'd taken her side. Just, we need to talk, as if I owed him my time after he'd failed to support me when I needed him most. I drafted and deleted a dozen responses before settling on a brief reply. I'm fine.
Don't need anything.
Will contact you if I'm ready to talk. A week later, Maria buzzed from the security gate. Ms. Abigail, there's a man and woman at the gate insisting on seeing you. They say they're your father and his partner. Ice flooded my veins. My father is there? Richard Parker?
Yes, miss.
Security is waiting for instructions. My first instinct was to send them away. But something inside me, perhaps Thomas's influence, whispered that running from confrontation solved nothing. Tell security I'll meet them in the formal living room in 15 minutes. I took time to compose myself, changing from casual clothes into a simple but elegant blue dress. Armor of a sort. When I entered the living room, Richard Parker stood awkwardly by the fireplace while Eleanor examined a small Rodin sculpture with naked interest. Neither heard me enter. That's an original, I said coolly. Worth about $2 million. They both turned, startled. Dad looked thinner than I remembered, with new lines etched around his eyes. Eleanor recovered quickly, a practiced smile spreading across her face. Abigail, darling. What an absolutely magnificent home. We've been so worried about you. My father stepped forward. Abby, we needed to see that you were all right. As you can see, I'm fine. How did you find me? Matthew tracked you down through that Foundation announcement. Why didn't you tell us about any of this? He gestured around the room. Your great-uncle. This inheritance? When exactly should I have told you? Before or after you threw me and my belongings onto the front lawn? Dad flinched. Eleanor quickly interceded. Water under the bridge, surely. We're family after all. We should celebrate your good fortune together. The audacity was breathtaking. I turned to my father. Why are you really here? Before he could answer, Eleanor moved closer, her voice honeyed. We've been thinking, with your new circumstances, we could help you manage all this. It's so much responsibility for someone your age. Richard has excellent financial experience, and I specialize in wealth management. And there it was, the real reason for their visit. My money. My inheritance. The very thing Eleanor had been after all along, just from a different source. I have financial advisors, thank you, I replied coldly. Dad finally found his voice. Abby, I want to apologize for what happened. I didn't handle things well. You didn't handle things at all, Dad. You chose to believe Eleanor over your own daughter without a shred of evidence. I know, and I'm sorry. When I saw that magazine article about your foundation, I realized what an incredible person you are. I'm proud of what you're doing with your inheritance. His words might have meant something 3 months ago. Now, they rang hollow. Are you proud of me? Or proud that I'm wealthy now? Would you have come looking for me if I'd just been living in a small apartment somewhere? Dad looked stricken, but Eleanor smoothly interjected. Family is family, regardless of circumstances. We should put the unpleasantness behind us and move forward together. Something in her practiced sincerity triggered a memory. I walked to a side table and picked up a remote control, pressing a button that lowered a screen on the far wall. Before we discuss moving forward, I think we should address the past. With another button press, security footage appeared on the screen, footage from the day before I'd been kicked out, showing Eleanor entering my room, rifling through my belongings, and pocketing my mother's jewelry. Eleanor's face drained of color. The villa has an excellent security system, I explained. When I moved in, I had Maria ship all my belongings from Sophia's apartment. Among them was Mom's empty jewelry box. It made me curious, so I asked my security team to run a check on both of you. They're very thorough. I clicked again, and the screen showed Eleanor at various jewelry stores, selling pieces I recognized as my mother's. They tracked down 3 pieces so far at pawn shops and consignment stores in Boston. I've already recovered them. Dad turned to Eleanor, shock and betrayal dawning on his face. You told me Abigail said you could have those. You said she didn't want them. Eleanor's mask slipped completely. Oh, grow up, Richard. She wasn't using them, just keeping them in a box. At least I appreciated their value. Their monetary value, I corrected. You never cared about their sentimental worth. I clicked again and bank statements appeared on the screen, the same ones I'd photographed before being thrown out. My investigators also found these. Systematic withdrawals from Dad's accounts to yours, Eleanor. Over $120,000 in 4 months. Dad staggered back, as if physically struck. Is this true? Eleanor's eyes darted between us, calculating her options. Finally, her demeanor changed completely, the warm, caring facade vanishing into cold fury. You ungrateful little bitch, she spat at me. You had everything, a father who supported you while you played at your little art job, a free place to live. I worked for what I took. By lying and manipulation, I countered calmly. By being smarter than both of you. Richard was an easy mark, so desperate for company he never questioned why someone like me would be interested in a boring bank manager with a needy daughter. Dad's face crumpled, the truth of her contempt hitting harder than any physical blow could have. Security will escort you out, Eleanor, I said, pressing a button on the house phone. The police in Boston have been notified about the theft and fraud. They'll be in touch. You can't prove anything, she snarled. I already have. Now get out of my house. 2 security guards appeared, flanking Eleanor, who looked ready to lunge at me before thinking better of it. As they escorted her toward the door, she turned back. This isn't over. Actually, it is, I replied. Completely over. When she was gone, Dad slumped onto a sofa, looking suddenly old and broken. I've been such a fool, he whispered. I sat across from him, maintaining emotional distance despite a surprising flicker of compassion. Why did you believe her, Dad? After all our years together as family, how could you take her word over mine? He rubbed his face wearily. I was lonely. After your mother died, I threw myself into work, into raising you kids. Then Matthew left, and you were building your own life. Eleanor made me feel needed again, valued. So, you chose that feeling over the truth? I chose what was comfortable over what was difficult, he admitted. It was easier to believe you were jealous than to consider I'd made a terrible mistake with Eleanor.
I'm so sorry, Abby.
His apology was sincere, but it couldn't erase the pain of that rainy night, of get out, echoing in my ears, of not anymore when I'd said I was family. I need time, Dad. You broke something between us that won't be fixed with one conversation. He nodded, eyes glistening with tears. I understand. Would it be possible to talk again sometime? To try to make amends? Maybe. But it needs to be on my terms, not because you're impressed with this. I gestured around us at the villa. And not because you need something from me. I just need my daughter back, he said simply. As he left, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, lingering hurt, cautious hope, and a new sense of strength. For the first time, I'd confronted my father as an equal, not as his dependent daughter desperate for approval. That evening, my phone rang with Matthew's number. Abby, it's Matt.
Dad called me.
Is it true about Eleanor? Every word. I confirmed.
Jesus.
He exhaled heavily. I should have listened to you. I'm sorry I dismissed your concerns. You chose to believe what was convenient, just like Dad did. That's fair, he conceded. Look, I know I can't just waltz back into your life, but I'd like the chance to try to make things right. No agenda, no asking for anything. Just reconnecting with my sister. I thought of Thomas, who'd cut off his family completely. Had that brought him peace or just a different kind of loneliness? We can talk, I said finally, but I'm not rushing back to how things were before. Trust has to be rebuilt. I understand, Matthew replied. And Abby? I'm really proud of what you're doing with the foundation. It suits you. After hanging up, I walked through the gallery wing, stopping before a small landscape my mother had particularly admired in one of her letters to Thomas. Family was complicated, capable of both the deepest wounds and the most meaningful connections. Like Thomas, I would forge my own path forward, but perhaps without cutting all ties to the past. 6 months after moving into the villa, I stood in the newly renovated gallery space that would serve as the headquarters for the Williams Parker Foundation. The former pool house had been transformed into a modern exhibition area with classroom space for educational programs. Large windows overlooked the Atlantic, filling the rooms with natural light that made the artwork glow. It's perfect, Lindsay Barrett said, admiring the installation of our inaugural exhibition, Emerging Voices in American Art, featuring works by 10 talented but undiscovered artists from diverse backgrounds. Thomas would have loved this, Maria added, her eyes misty with emotion. Using his collection to inspire new generations, it's exactly what he hoped for. The grand opening was scheduled for the following weekend. We'd invited art educators, museum directors, local officials, and students from area schools. The Foundation's mission, to democratize access to art education and support emerging artists, was already generating buzz in cultural circles. Creating the foundation had given me purpose, but the deeper healing had come through therapy. At Lindsay's recommendation, I'd started seeing Dr. Rachel Coleman, a psychologist who specialized in family trauma. Our weekly sessions helped me process not just the betrayal by my father and Eleanor, but the lifelong pattern of conditional approval I'd experienced growing up. Your worth isn't measured by your productivity or practicality, Dr. Coleman reminded me during one pivotal session. You're inherently valuable, Abigail, apart from what you contribute or achieve. Those words had unlocked something inside me, permission to exist without constantly proving my worth through accomplishments or compromise. My relationship with my father was slowly mending. We'd progressed from awkward monthly phone calls to occasional visits. Richard had sold the Boston house, too many painful memories, he said, and moved to a small condo closer to the city. He was seeing a therapist too, working through his own patterns and grief that had led to his vulnerability to someone like Eleanor. During his last visit, we'd walked along the beach as the sun set, talking more openly than we had in years. I always thought I was protecting you by pushing you toward a practical career, he admitted. I was terrified you'd struggle financially like my parents did. But I never saw how your passion for art filled you up in a way that money never could. And I never understood how scary it must have been raising 2 kids alone after Mom died, I replied. We both did the best we could with what we knew at the time. My relationship with Matthew had improved too. He'd flown down several times, helping with legal aspects of the foundation setup. During his visits, I saw glimpses of the brother I'd been close to as a child, before ambition and Dad's expectations had created distance between us. Eleanor had faced consequences for her actions. The evidence I'd gathered had led to charges of theft and fraud. She'd ultimately accepted a plea deal rather than risk trial, resulting in probation, restitution payments, and community service. The legal proceedings had revealed similar patterns with previous partners. She was a practiced con artist who targeted lonely, financially stable men. More meaningful than these external developments was my internal journey. I was learning to trust my instincts, to value my perspectives, and to set healthy boundaries. I no longer felt the need to justify my existence or defend my passions. I'd also begun dating again, cautiously. Ryan Matthews was an architectural preservationist I'd met through the Palm Beach Preservation Society. Unlike Jackson from college, who had been my father's idea of a suitable partner, Ryan shared my appreciation for history and beauty. He understood the value of preserving the past while creating space for new voices. Our relationship was developing slowly, built on mutual respect rather than need or convenience. Ryan appreciated my independence and supported the Foundation's mission without trying to direct or control it. "You've created something remarkable here," he told me as we walked through the exhibition space the night before the grand opening. "It honors your great-uncle while being completely your own vision." The Foundation opening exceeded all expectations. Over 200 people attended, including art critics from national publications. The Palm Beach Post ran a full-page feature on the Foundation's mission and the story behind it, though I'd been careful to keep the most painful personal details private. A month after the opening, I made my first return trip to Boston. I needed to visit the gallery where I'd worked and properly thank Ms. Bennett and Sophia for their support during my darkest hours. The city felt both familiar and strange, like a place I'd visited in a dream. I drove past my father's old house, now owned by a young family with children's bicycles in the driveway. The sight brought unexpected peace, new life and energy replacing the toxic final months I'd spent there. While in Boston, I had one final confrontation. Eleanor, now working at a small financial services firm after losing her banking position, had requested to meet. Against Ryan's advice, I agreed, choosing a public coffee shop as the location. She looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than in my memories. Her designer clothes had been replaced by off-the-rack business, where her highlighted hair showing dark roots. "I won't pretend I'm sorry for what I did," she said after we'd sat in uncomfortable silence. "But I am sorry it went as far as it did." "Why did you ask to see me?" I questioned, keeping my voice neutral. "Curiosity, mostly. I wanted to see what $45 million looks like on someone who didn't have to work for it." I smiled, recognizing the attempt to provoke me. "I'm working harder now than I ever have, Eleanor. The difference is I'm building something meaningful instead of taking from others." She studied me with grudging respect. "You've changed." "Yes," I agreed. "I have." As I walked away from that meeting, I felt the last weight lift from my shoulders. Eleanor had no power over me anymore. Neither her actions nor her opinions could touch the life I was creating. Back in Palm Beach, spring turned to summer. The Foundation launched its first scholarship program for art students from disadvantaged backgrounds. We partnered with local schools to bring students to the collection for educational programs. Each initiative felt like a step toward fulfilling both Thomas's legacy and my own potential. On warm evenings, I often sat on the terrace where I'd stood that first night, shell-shocked by the sudden reversal of fortune. The same ocean stretched before me, but I was no longer the same person watching it. Life's painful lessons had strengthened rather than broken me. My father called on my 29th birthday. "I've been thinking about what to get you," he said. "It seems silly to buy anything for someone who has everything." "I don't need gifts, Dad." "I know. But I wanted to give you something meaningful." He paused. "I found the last letter your mother wrote to Thomas. It was in a box of her things I kept after she died. I never mailed it because, well, I was angry at him for choosing a different path than the family expected. I realize now how wrong that was." The letter arrived the next day. In it, my mother had written about my college acceptance and my excitement about studying art history. She'd enclosed a photograph of me at 18, beaming in front of the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. "She reminds me of you, Uncle Thomas." Asterisk, my mother had written. Asterisk, she sees beauty where others see impracticality. "I hope someday you two will meet. I think you'd recognize each other's spirits immediately." Asterisk, I framed the letter and placed it in my office at the Foundation, a bridge between past and future. A reminder that even when paths diverge, true connections remain. Life continues to unfold in unexpected ways. The Foundation grows, my relationships evolve, and I'm learning that happiness isn't found in wealth or approval, but in living authentically and creating meaning from whatever circumstances we're given. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives, like being told to get out by someone we love, become unexpected doorways to our true path. The journey isn't always easy, but it's infinitely worthwhile. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand by us when we're sleeping in our cars in the rain. Sometimes it's a great uncle we never met who recognizes himself in our passion. And sometimes it's the person we become when we finally stop trying to earn love and instead build a life worthy of the love we already deserve. What's your story of unexpected blessings that came from difficult times? Share in the comments below. And if my journey has touched you in any way, please subscribe and hit that like button. Your support means everything as I continue sharing stories of resilience and renewal. Thank you for being part of my healing journey.